one of the co-founders of Teletrim. Thanks for showing up for the live stream. Always glad to have everyone here, especially if you got questions. We'll have or find answers. Just wait for YouTube to get started. There we go. Okay, now we're in. Welcome. All right. February. Where's the year gone? If you haven't started your weight loss journey yet, now is a good time to start. I'm restarting mine today. You know, those Christmas calories may have done a number or two on me, so, you know, I'm going to be on the journey with you guys, okay? I guess a little bit about me. I'm Dr. Gary Batman. I've been a doctor here in Australia for 18 years. Been through various specialties, some radiology training, and into GP, where I found sort of my passion of connecting with patients and their journey long term, you know, meeting patients, their children, their grandchildren, see how they've progressed and grown in health and in life. And so one of the things I noticed in my GP practice, sorry, I'm just getting my things ready, is a lot about weight. That's one of the sort of the questions I get asked a lot of, especially with a lot of new medications out there. It's one of the things that we see, or I get asked often, you know. And I think one of the big misunderstandings around weight loss is everyone is hearing different information. I've got an influencer telling me this. I have one person who's doing that and saying, don't do this. But then I have another one who's doing this and say, don't do that. So I think one of the things in medicine we have a role to do is to help sort out fact from fiction. You know, what's a myth and what's real, what works. And I think probably the biggest, not necessarily myth, but maybe misunderstanding about weight loss, again, is that fat or being overweight is a chronic condition. You know, it's something that, like high blood pressure or diabetes, something that you have to manage pretty much for life. You know, some people are lucky. They're probably the outliers who just doesn't matter what they eat. You know, they never gain a pound. That's probably the exception and not the rule. There's probably a lot more going on in their biology. And that is what a lot of people don't understand, is that weight loss isn't just about willpower. You know, we all have the will to do stuff. We all have the power to change our lives, or change whatever. And along the way, we're going to hit roadblocks, and things are going to be hard. You know, they're going to be harder before they get easier. They're going to stall. We're going to be demotivated. And that's why this thing is a lifelong challenge and journey. And that's where it's good to have a medical professional who's there to help every step of the way along this journey. Someone you can ask questions to. Come to the chat, join in, ask a question. See your health professional, ask them questions. Be educated, be smart about your weight loss. Make your time count, you know, be efficient. Don't do stuff that's gonna hurt you. And remember that, you know, weight loss is a lot about fighting biology, not about fighting your willpower. And, you know, I've done a few little talks about, you know, stress hormones, you know, visceral fat, the fat around our organs, and how that messes with our hunger and our satiety, our feeling full. It also messes with our insulin resistance, our ability to put energy into the muscles, and how we shouldn't give up hope, because even just small amounts of weight gain, you know, 3 to 6 kilos, can be enough to really give us large gains that can help go forward. And something that we've got now, opposed to the past, is there are a lot of medication options that we didn't have 30, 20, 10, just over 5 years ago, that we have now that can help get us to where we want to go in our journey, and then help maintain. Okay. So, again, a little more about me. Again, Australian doctor, 18 years. Saw quite a few patients in GP practice. And again, when I was originally inspired to do medicine, one of the doctors who inspired me as part of his obstetrics and gynae work, he also did women's health. And at the time, I didn't think too much about that. I go, okay, well, yeah, is that just men's health, but for women? And there's differences, like adult health versus kids' health. There's differences. But I think one of the things he did during that women's health was weight loss. And this is going back like 30 years. I know I'm old. And in that time then, we didn't have as much information or medications. But the way he talked to his patients, understood his patients, and got them towards their goals, at their goals, it kept them going. It was something that just kind of stuck with me, always in my mind and in the back of my mind. Even more so nowadays, where I'm like, wow, we have so much more medical ammunition than they had back then. And here he was. What were the things that stood out? And I think one of the things that stood out was sort of that personalized care, him, being part of the family, of his patients, delivering their children, their children's children, and on and on. And then being able to just talk about this and be along that whole journey with their weight and everything. And to me, that's the thing that helped make the difference, was that just bit of care and personalized care. And I think that's what I've come to 18 years later in medicine, especially around weight loss, is that that's what people need. They need to understand it's a long journey against your biology. It's a battle, it's a war, and you need someone on your side. Okay, I'm not a Navy SEAL. Maybe after some training and some time, I could look like one, but I am, but I'm a medical Navy SEAL. We're here to help you lose weight. Okay, we're here to fight with you. We're a team to get you to the end. And I guess that brings you to, what is Teletrim? Why are we all here on this Teletrim live stream? Teletrim is sort of a passion project of mine and my co-founder, because we both came to that same conclusion, that part of the medical system is broken. Consults are rushed. Patients aren't being heard. There's so much information. Patients aren't getting a chance to ask questions. And we thought, there's a way to do it better. There's a way to do it so that people succeed. And that's how it kind of came about. And so we, started talking and found out that, this is where we want to go. And we both came to sort of, again, that same conclusion that, I've been a doctor for 18 years. And what I realized is the medical system is rushed. And doctors in this time have been forced to see more patients and not spend time understanding them and making sure they understand us. And I think that's why a lot of people leave appointments feeling unheard or confused, or sometimes just stuck, not knowing which way to go, especially around weight loss. And at Teletrim, we aim to do things differently. We want to help people lose weight by safely understanding their body, their habits, their health and biology, and then building a medical plan that actually fits them, you. We assess, we plan, we support, and adjust, because the real results come from treating a whole person, not just numbers on the scale or one random symptom. It's treating you, the person. And I think that's where patients get the most satisfaction. I mean, the weight loss, yes, everyone's satisfied when they lose weight, but I think when you leave a consult and you feel, yeah, that was right, I like that, he listened, he understood, he helped me understand. What? I didn't have to go home and Google half the stuff that he told me. I think that's what's missing in medicine. And, you always hear me say, there's an art to medicine. And that's what I saw in that doctor 30 years ago who got me into medicine, interested in medicine, was the art. there's science. There's so much science. I come from a math background, so I love nerding it up. I love talking about stuff. You might even have to ask me to shut up sometimes. But it's that art of connecting with someone, and that's what I enjoy about medicine. I like patients being happy. I like them being satisfied. It's good to see people who get good treatment. Where I had mentioned the Google, I think, as a doctor, I hate hearing when patients say they had to Google everything after a visit, because it tells me their questions weren't properly answered. Medicine should reduce confusion, not create it. Okay, there should be ample time to ask questions, have them explained, re-ask, close that loop, get understanding. And it's hard because the system, the government's cut funding, this, that, so the system isn't geared towards proper consults, personalized medicine. It's geared towards, we're going to give medicine to everyone, regardless of if it's effectiveness, unless you're willing to pay. And some places, eastern suburbs, huge gaps. Private hospital, huge copays, but I don't have to wait. I think because weight loss and fat, actually just having extra weight, being overweight, causes so many long-term problems, and it's something that we can really hit those long-term problems if we do something about it early. I think that's worth money. I think that's where there should be money. The government should put money. For a cup of coffee a day, I can live better, longer, healthier, have a more enjoyable life at a cup of coffee a day, or if you buy a big mocha frappuccino with whipped cream and everything, probably half the price of one of those a day, and you don't need all those calories, by the way. So I guess probably what I did there was probably wrong. I was judging you. I was judging people who drink mocha frappuccinos, and that's probably something that's not good. That's something you may have run across in one of your own consults. You may have mentioned to the doctor or to someone, in the hospital, nurse, whoever. You may have come in with a super mega grande, or not even a Diet Coke. You may have come in with a real 2-liter Coke, and that may be all you drink every day, or 3 of those a day. I think I even had a colleague who that's all he drank, and he had health issues, But again, I think that little example of me casting judgment may be something that you've come across. And that's something we try not to do at Teletrim, because we're not here to fight you. We're here to fight your biology. We're here to fight the medical stuff that's inside you, that visceral fat, the hormones. We're going to look at the bloods. We're going to look at, the scans. We're going to look at the weight. We're going to look at the measurements. We're going to look at all these things to come up with a good plan for you. And we understand that we're all human, where life gets in the way. I've got 2 kids. They drive me crazy. Love them. But I've got 2 kids, and sometimes that makes it hard to try and go squeeze in exercise or even eat right. Or I think the big one that leads to a lot of dad bod or weight creep is, they just don't quite clear their plate, but you don't want to waste food. So this guy, so you eat that last little bit when you go, oh, all that really adds up. So I think we don't want to judge, and that's not what we do at Teletrim. We guide, we work with you, not against you. And again, as a doctor, I don't think any patient should be judged in a consult. Healthcare should be supportive and respectful and not intimidating or dismissive, because patients are smart. You guys are smart. You pick up on those vibes. And I think that can be the difference between you asking the question that really brought you to the doctor, as opposed to just ending the consult and not finding out what's going on. Sorry, we had some questions and I wasn't paying attention. let's see, why do you think so many patients feel the need to look things up after an appointment? Again, I think a lot of it has to do with now that a lot of times appointments are shorter or we're rushed. I mean, that's why we start at 5:10. That's a doctor 5 o'clock, you know, only 10 minutes late. I'm only 10 minutes late. I'm only 5 minutes late. I'm only 15 minutes late. I think part of the thing that reasons a rush is because consults have become a little bit shorter, or there's that rush to try to get to the next appointment because we don't want to make people late. And we understand that people have lives or pay for parking, or, you know, we understand how these things can snowball. So I think that people feel the need to look things up because they don't have time to ask questions, or the doctor's sort of given the shortest answer he can to answer a question because he himself, he, she, they feel pressed for time because they want to get to the next patient, or because they need to get to the next patient. Because again, the system is just broken. So I think that's part of the reason why. I mean, I encourage my patients to look things up after. You know, I do my best to explain. I come up with the worst, best, worst metaphors ever. They somehow work, but they are horrible. But, you know, most of the time they work. But I encourage my patients to look things up and ask. So I think there's a difference between Googling because you don't know what you were told or understand what you were told versus Googling to find out more. You know, you go, oh, well, I know this. Now I've got more questions. So I think that's why a lot of patients need to look things up. How does Googling symptoms affect patient anxiety and trust in care? Oh, Lord. So, yeah, I'm old enough to have remembered medicine before Google and medicine, okay, maybe not quite before Google, but the early days of Google, you know, and now. And I think, one, with patient anxiety, Googling things can be hard because everything always ends in cancer or death, or, you know, it's probably gotten a little bit better now with AI, definitely a lot better with AI. But I think a lot of times when you don't have a full context, you know, it's like looking at the front end of a car and not realizing that the back end is a ute as opposed to a sedan. And you go, what? Okay, you know, and sometimes that's how it is with using Google or AI, is if you don't put in the right inputs, you don't get the right outputs. And so when you only have half the picture, you can get way different answers. And I think that can crank up anxiety if you're expecting something drastic when it's not. When it's something normal or something easily treatable. I think in terms of trust and care, I think Googling does help build some trust and also can break trust. I think, again, patients nowadays are more knowledgeable about medicine and conditions, and they can Google things to be in the know. And when they're talking with their doctor, you know, you can kind of tell if the doctor's not sure. And that's okay. Doctors don't have to know every answer. Medicine is so complex. You know, sometimes we do have to go, look, we reach a spot where I need to consult with someone or send you to a specialist. That's why we have, you know, not just family medicine specialists, we have neurologist specialists. We have endocrinologist specialists, you know. We do have oncologists for, you know, cancer and stuff. We do have people we need to send to. So I think that the trust there is that patients will see when their doctor, if he does know his stuff or her stuff, or if their doctor doesn't, or if their doctor, you know, knows when to go, hey, look, this is what we need to do. Here's kind of an idea, you know, move on. And patients can go, you need to go see one of these type of doctors, and patients can explore who's the best, read reviews, do whatever. So I think it can help both build and break trust. How does fear of judgment change what patients choose to share? How does fear of judgment change what patients choose to share? I think, again, I've, you know, early days, I've been part of, I've probably done it myself. I'm sure I have. You know, just let a little bit of judgment bleed. And it's one of the things we're taught in medicine is not to judge, you know. And I think now after 18 years, I'm pretty okay at it. There's always room for improvement. You know, we can always be better. But I think the fear of judgment changes that patients sometimes won't share embarrassing things. They may not even share the original problem they come in for. Okay, because if I have some problem that's embarrassing or something else, I can go get judgment from my friends. I can get them to make fun of me all I want. If it's something, especially weight loss. In weight loss, there's a lot of judgment, and that turns into a lot of shame. And shame is a killer because it kills motivation. Why even bother? This is all my fault. This is, there's nothing I can do. That shame is horrible. And that's what I feel that judgment does, is it can bring that shame and it just shuts down. People shut down. And that's not what we like at Teletrim. We like the chance to ask questions, the chance to answer questions, the chance for you to question us, the chance to build a plan together. Okay? And I think people who get to that kind of environment that's a bit more open, their experience is better. They're not traumatized. I think I even had a patient today I was talking about who I was talking to, and they're like, oh, you know what, this was actually okay. Like I had, wow, I normally have doctor phobia or doctor's appointment phobia, and I've had to sit in the car, and just with the windows cracked for a while to get ready, and I'm like, wow, that's a lot of trauma in there. And we kind of laughed about it, and I said, well, ultimately we got kind of not to the bottom of it, because we're not going to unpack that in years of whatever, but I think the fact that the patient didn't feel judged about what brought them in, I think those little things just help them open up more and help us actually get to treating what they really wanted to be treated for, that they might have been, they were slightly embarrassed about. What can doctors do to make consultations feel safer and more open? I usually start by saying something embarrassing about myself. Not by choice, it just happens that way. Notorious for spilling coffee. That's why I'm only allowed a small cup. At least today anyway, because I've already had one spill. I think the biggest thing is when doctors try to feel that, make that personal connection, I think that helps make that safe environment. It shows, hey, I'm a bit open. I've got some pictures of my daughter on my desk. I'll talk about my family. I talk about me. If a patient has a similar problem to one I've had, or one that one of my family members has had to go through, I'll share experiences, stories, and just to show that I'm human. I'm just like you. I've been there. I understand. Like my dad's on his last round of chemo on Wednesday, so he's gonna have his chemo and he's gonna ring that bell, and and that's exciting. That's and that's a journey that a lot of patients have made, and I've been with them on. But wow, sorry. But I haven't lived it. It hasn't been personal until now, and I think that's one way consultations can feel safer, is when there's just that little bit of extra give before we take, and I think that helps keep it open. And then try not to be judgmental. When they walk in with the giant whipped cream mocha frappuccino, don't judge. Just ask, where's mine? Light whipped cream. No. No. Yeah. Let me see. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. I guess one of the things. Oh, there we go. Good question. Why are we treating symptoms instead of addressing the underlying cause? So, why are we treating symptoms instead of the underlying cause? I think it all goes back to the short consults. The system isn't working, and short appointments often lead to sort of quick fixes, rather than being able to really deep dive or deep investigations into what's really going on. And it shows, we call it, I jokingly call it Band-Aid medicine. When you only have enough time, especially you see it in the hospital at night, they have all the resources during the daytime to solve all these problems, but yet somehow these things only become problems at night. And after years, many years, at least, I still do a few now of nights. It's the one thing I see is that a lot of these things that can be solved because they're rushed don't, and they come to the night. And the poor night person has two choices. They can really work it out and be thorough, which is what you want, and which is what I try to do when I'm on night shift. Again, we're constrained by time because but then we kind of call it Band-Aid medicine, because you go, well, the times that I can't be deep and thorough because I've got to run to a code or do something else, I kind of just have to go, let's treat what we can treat now and leave a message for the day team that might be less than flattering, to encourage them to solve these problems and not leave them for night. But I think, again, short appointments or rushed consults are just quick fixes, and you don't get to the deeper stuff that's going on. What pressures push healthcare towards symptom-based treatment? What pressures push healthcare towards symptom-based treatment? I think it goes back to the big ones. The government cutting funding, or adding more funding, but only a little bit, and often in places it could have been better spent elsewhere. So I think the pressures is financial. Medicare rebates have been frozen or reduced. So where inflation went up 5%, 2 years in a row, Medicare rebates went up 1%. And that 5% was rent, electricity, paying staff, utilities, and that adds up to 20%. I know the math's not right, but versus the 1% we get back from Medicare extra. It's kind of a slap in the face to go, well, politicians got a raise. Why not, help the people? And that's why we're seeing it. I think the other pressures is that medicine is a finite resource. There's only so many doctors. There's only so many clinics. When the government doesn't keep up money, practice is closed. And again, having a finite resource, you go, how many people have tried to get a Monday appointment walk-in? After Australia Day, I had to get one for my daughter. And we had to search pretty far and wide, and we had to pay a premium to get in. And that's part of what's the pressure in the system, is that you go, we can try to treat as many people as possible, we being the system, not me. They can treat as many people as possible so that it's pretty equitable, or everyone's getting care. It may not be the best care we want, but everyone's getting care, or we can take our time and do longer and do right. So I think those are some of the pressures that are there, is finances and time, and just a medicine being a finite resource. How does addressing the underlying cause change long-term outcomes? I think you're probably talking about the underlying causes of diseases. So how does addressing the underlying cause of disease change long-term outcomes? I think it was like I had talked about with weight loss at the start. Being overweight, even just that little bit, but moving on to obesity, has profound cardiovascular risk factors. Increased risk of heart attack and stroke, and then you go, also I've got more organ fat, more visceral fat, so that gives me more risk of insulin resistance. And you go, well, okay, well, insulin, well then it means I'm at higher risk for diabetes, and that insulin resistance is going to also cycle my fat increase. Body sees the insulin's resistant, sees I'm got plenty of sugar, okay, we're stored as fat. We'll release more insulin because that sugar's not going anywhere. We'll store it as, so it's a vicious cycle. So then we got more fat, we got, worse cardiovascular risk. We're probably getting diabetes. There's probably going to be, there's going to be some hypertension, some high blood pressure, and that's going to affect our organs, especially our kidneys, in general. And these are all things that are small, just chipping away at you over time. And we're not making a statue of David. What we're doing is we're destroying the dam that's holding everything back from just collapsing. A retaining wall. We're holding the retaining wall from collapsing. And that's where I think if you address the underlying cause, the weight, the fat, then you can really change the trajectory of that long-term outcome. We can go, you know what, we're not going to bust the dam. We're not going to bust the retaining wall. You know, we're going to get more like our statue of David. But it doesn't have to be David. Maybe I'm Dionysus, you know. Wine. Yeah, I think, again, hitting the underlying cause early it requires much less investment. You know? We can get the weight down. Again, 5 to 15% weight loss, which for the most part is, you know, 3 to 6 kilos, 3 to 9 kilos. You know, just that much weight loss can make a great difference to your biology, your metabolic health. You know, the looks, that will come, but just biologically being healthy, it only takes a little bit to gain a lot, especially at the start. So then I think it's much easier to have the victories, to have the wins, and that's what keeps us going. What's included in Teletrim service? So with Teletrim, it's good what we aim for. With Teletrim, you receive personalized doctor-led weight care, okay, weight management. That includes one-on-one consultations with the same doctor, comprehensive medical assessment, lab test referrals, and clear explanations of the results, and an ongoing plan that evolves with your body as your body changes. And the appointments are flexible via telehealth, so we can work around your schedule. You can, you know, keep doing what you need to do. And I think that's the important thing is, you know, it's personalized. Doctors, you have time. You're going to be heard. And we're flexible. And the good thing too is also with Teletrim, we have our live stream, so you can come ask a question whenever we're streaming, Monday to Friday. Not tomorrow, sorry, we're not having a live stream tomorrow. I got a school thing that happening. But you can come to the live stream at 5:10 Sydney time every day. Or for our members, we're gonna have we have a private live stream where you can just come ask non-personal questions. That's for medical legal stuff, you know, but you can come ask the questions that you didn't get a chance to ask, or things that have changed before your next consult, to, you know, go, hey, am I doing the right thing, or whatever. Come make a joke about me. You know, I love jokes. My last name is Batman. I love hearing new ones. I love making my own. My 9-year-old daughter loves making them at my expense. So, you know, hey Dad, I heard Batman's parents were murdered. Or I heard Batman's parents were dead. I'm not quite sure how to take that, especially for my 9-year-old. But, you know, we love to create a kind of a family environment in Teletrim. And I think that's the thing is, you know, for a cup of coffee a day, you know, less than a Big Mac, whatever, less than a Happy Meal, you know, you get medications if you need it, support, a plan, somewhere to come ask questions. You get a group of like-minded people, because again, we don't want everyone, you know, and we're not going to pressure you. We offer a money back. You know, if you're not happy with the service, that's fine. We're here to keep the people who want to be on the journey. We're here to support people who want to be on the journey. You know, we're not going to twist your arm, strong arm you. You know, we're going to be here to help hold your hand when you want us to hold your hand. We're going to be here when you have a question. We're going to be here to help give you a plan. Okay, we're going to be here for the long haul, and I think that's the important thing. And we'll do it with horrible video of me, you know, or fantastic video of me, depends on your frame of reference. But I think that's one of the big things is that we are trying to form a little, I'm gonna use the word family, or just a more personal community of people who want a personalized treatment, who might want to meet others who are like-minded. Maybe get their own family to come join, because, you know, nothing motivates you more than having your own family with you, or your own friends, you know, egging each other on, or spurring each other, or making jokes about me, or, you know, just asking questions because, you know, you need to ask questions. And I think that's the important thing is ultimately we at Teletrim value you enough because we know weight loss is hard. We know it's you versus your biology. And we want to be there every step of the way. And we want to make sure that you do it as efficiently as possible, as safely as possible, and all that so that you can be metabolically healthy, biologically healthy. And ultimately our goal is to help you live longer and better. I mean, I know part of my weight loss journey is, I have my children and I want to be around when my children have children and not change their nappies, but, just be around. I want to be there, but I want to be able to play with my children or my grandchildren. I want to be healthy like that. And that's what we at Teletrim want to do, is we want to get our patients to the goal. And the goal always moves. The goalpost always moves because, like we said, weight loss is chronic. Fat loss is chronic. It's a chronic condition. It's something you have to battle all the time. But when you get to that goalpost the first time and you go, well, what do I do now? And that goalpost moves. You go, where do I do now? We help. And it moves. We help. We got a cheer squad. What do I do now? We've got videos. What do I do now? We've got questions. So it's really about being just as supportive as we can so that you feel understood, heard, can ask questions. You feel supported. And I think that's the Teletrim difference, is it's just personalized, doctor-led healthcare that gives you correct information and helps you the whole length of your journey, not just a quick fix like you see with some Instas or some other places. All right, I think that's probably enough for today. Yeah, again, no live stream tomorrow. My apologies. School stuff crept up on me and I didn't have a plan. To make it up, I will have a live stream on Saturday. Check out the website for times, or check out the YouTube. Will pop up a time. Are there any kid birthdays? Your daughter's getting a haircut. Okay, we'll figure it out. But we'll post it on YouTube or on the website. All right, thanks again for tuning in and for tuning in. Any questions, feel free to hit us on YouTube. Hit us at our Teletrim email, which should be there. And hey, if you did learn something today, or you want to just come tell me to shut up, subscribe and tune in every day to tell me to stop talking, or subscribe so that you can see, hey, the live stream is up today. I'm going to join in. I'm going to ask some questions. And if you did learn something today, go ahead and give us a like. And don't forget our Friday food swaps. We had a good one on Friday. One of my own food swap do's and one of our staff's food swap don'ts. So I think if you didn't, go back and check out some of the old videos for stuff there. All right, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you not tomorrow, but we'll see you on Wednesday at around 5:10.